All right, happy Saturday, everyone. We're back another Saturday at noon with the Watchdogs. I'm Robert Bryant. Happy to be with you, and hello to Savannah, Georgia, in the United States.
Hello, hello, and welcome to our guest. I'm Julius Hall, and we have a great show for you today. Y'all just tune in, send all your questions in. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can if we don't run out of our own.
Right, right. So Julius, I every week, and we'll definitely we're going to bring you in a minute. I always talk about birthdays, but today someone turns 44. So I just want to give that shout out to myself as we get started today.
I thought I saw that somewhere that somebody turned 44 today. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Yeah, yeah, I'm getting closer and closer to the AARP card, so I'm excited. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. And so today we have Allen Westbrook, and Ann is a candidate for the Georgia House District 163. And so really excited to learn about what Ann is proposing and platform and vision. And with that, if you would, to our guests, if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. And happy birthday to you, Robert, first of
Thank
all.
you. Thank you.
And thanks so much to you and Julius for having me on. I'm a watcher of your shows, so I'm happy to get the chance to be a guest. My name is Allen Westbrook. I'm a candidate for Georgia House District 163. I am a Savannah native, and I'm a mother of three in a blended family. I'm an attorney by profession, and I've been an advocate, primarily focused advocacy on gun violence prevention, and primarily focused at the state level. I've been doing that work for about 10 years, and that was the road that led me to deciding to run for office. I'm a second-time candidate. I ran for this seat in 2020, lost a very, very close election to Rep. Derek Mallow, who has decided to seek higher office and run for Senate. And so that opened the seat back up. I didn't really have in my 2022 plan being a candidate, but timing is everything, and politics is unpredictable, and here I sit. So
Yeah, you never know what can happen in 2 years.
That's true.
Yeah, you lost by 19 votes that time, so that tells us that the people do like you.
It was. I got a lot of votes, not quite enough, but I got a lot of votes, and so that made me think, okay, there's something I'm saying is resonating with enough folks that I think it's worth it to try again. So here I am.
Well, one thing that I saw, before Robert gets to his first question, is that I tell candidates this all the time: don't come out and give us yourself just at election time. And one thing that I saw that you're doing is that even after the race 2 years ago, you have continued to stay involved. We see you everywhere doing everything, and I commend you on that, because it is some people will come out and we only see them at election time. They don't come and serve the community. They don't come and get engaged and involved. They don't try to have any type of advocacy on any level, not even on social media or any other level. So I commend you on staying involved and staying engaged. And you're also the aide to State Rep Jackson, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I do serve her in that role. I'm here in Savannah, so I'm Savannah based. I'm not up in Atlanta. But I have been helping her in that role. I've helped out on her campaign and learned a lot from her. She's, her political gifts are very different from my political gifts. And so I've learned a lot from her. And hopefully I've been able to help her as well as she's made that transition. She has a wealth of knowledge of city government, but state government, it's a different level. And so, I had some relationships I'd built up there, and just sort of a knowledge of a lot of how it works up there from doing the advocacy work. So yeah, it's been fun learning.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and what we typically do is kind of engage in a discussion, and so we'll have questions, and audience, feel free to post your questions. But as we start today, one of the things that we've noticed in the House and the Senate in Georgia are some of these interesting bills that are being proposed. I actually had a call from a good friend of mine in Louisiana who was like, "What are y'all doing?" And so, not to be leading, as they would say in the legal profession, I don't want to lead the conversation and lead your answer. But what are some of the bills that are being proposed that you find problematic in general as you kind of look to the landscape of representing 163?
Sure. And I'll answer that kind of generally first. When I talk to people, and actually kind of getting back to what you raised, Julius, I have a passion for this work. I don't have to, I'm not one of those people that's like, I've got to be an elected. I think, you can make such a difference in so many ways. And some people will get elected and some people won't. And there's work for all of us to do. So that was a real authentic thing for me is to stay involved, because it's all the issues are still there. And so, whether you win or lose, you stay engaged in the work. But I talk a lot about our state legislature being so I live with, I talk to every day, and the issues that we have as Georgians when we talk about things like public education and not funding it fully, or lack of access to health care, or, the constant voting rights landscape, which changes constantly. Those are the kinds of issues that, the folks I talk to care about, kitchen table kind of stuff. And what you see in the state legislature is just a lot of culture wars kind of stuff. They want to talk about, trans girls in playing scholastic sports, or they want to talk about critical race theory, or banning books, or, just hyper managing, local education curriculum, those kinds of things. So I feel like the priorities and the focus are just so far off. When I look at what we need in Georgia, and when I look at what they're doing up there, do any of us really believe that they have a deep concern about, girl athletes in school? Do we really think that's the issue that's keeping them up at night, is an unfair playing field for those girls? We look at women's sports in this country generally, where you've got Brittany Griner detained in Russia because this is an elite athlete who can't make enough money in the U.S. Just playing her sport here, that she's got to go put herself in an unstable political situation in order to make the kind of money that male athletes take for granted. And I just kind of offer that as a backdrop, because this is the country we live in, and this is how we view women's sports. But I'm supposed to believe that the majority party in Atlanta is so concerned about 10-year-old girls playing soccer against transgender athletes. So that's kind of what I mean. I mean, to keep it sort of generally, it's just a real disconnect with values and practicality. And I say sometimes so much of what they do up there is solutions in search of problems, when we have so many real problems in Georgia. So that's a few examples.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Solutions in search of problems.
Right.
They do. It seems like they look for issues that don't need to be discussed. I know we have a lot of issues now, especially in regards to suppressing votes. Mm-hmm. And if we don't take over this, and I say we as Democrats, if we don't take over the state government, then it's going to be a problem for the immediate future. So we need people who's going to go in and knows the issues, know how to get things done, and will reverse all of these new laws that they put in place, because it's really a suppression of the vote. Because if the Supreme Court is not going to overturn it, it's going to take the local legislation, the state government to do it
Right.
after we change them out.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of those things are really anti-democratic, because we have a changing state. It's changing in ways that threaten the Republican majority. The Republican majority is not growing. It's not enlarging its tent, so to speak.
Mhm.
It's got a problem with women. It's got a problem, appealing to minority voters, and minority voters are growing and growing and growing in numbers, and and kind of bringing their values to the table and making their voices heard. And instead of saying to themselves, why don't our ideas bring any of those folks in, they say, well, we're just going to make it harder for those folks to express themselves at the ballot box. So it's really it's basic, democracy kind of stuff. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if we could kind of, I think all of the bills and legislation, well, not all, but a good number of them, when it impacts voting rights, access, and our own individual rights, those are important. And what we see now, I think, is this intrusion to control people's thoughts and people's ability to make choices. One of those being this bill around race in the classroom, right? What are your thoughts about that, and how would you engage with that conversation in that process?
I think I think the discussion that we're having, I guess loosely we're talking about critical race theory. I mean, is it safe to put that label on it? Or
Yeah, I have well, one, it interests me that Republicans, and I'm going to call them out, that the Republicans are using it as a fear factor, because at the end of the day, most research scholars, and you're in the legal field, know that that's a legal term used as a framework for research. So you can't teach it. And so it just baffles me how Republicans, but you get what I'm saying, yeah. But now they want to pull the whole conversation out now.
Yeah, let's pull the whole conversation out, because yes,
right.
I do know. Well, let's start here. Like, how a lot of us, or I'll speak just from my own perspective and not try to speak for anybody else, but basically what we teach about what I was taught about race is, we had slavery, it was bad. President Lincoln fixed that. Then we had segregation, Jim Crow, it was bad. Martin Luther King fixed that. Like, done. We all lived happily ever after. And we know how false that is. And, and that's not a real teaching at all of the history of race in this country. And so for folks like me, I had to seek that out, as in order to round out my own education. I had to do that, get interested in that myself. So that's what I did. And, but we should have a less whitewashed, a much more robust discussion of those issues from the very beginning. I don't know if y'all are, I'm sure you're familiar with Henry Louis Gates, who's the professor, and he's got shows on PBS, but he a lot of the things he's done, like, he did because he was like, the curriculum on this subject in schools is abysmal. And so somebody's got to come back and teach a fuller history. And so I've learned a lot from the stuff that he's put out, some of those PBS series. So we should absolutely be talking about it. I am a white woman raising white boys. Discussions of race do not make them feel bad about themselves. Like, it's nothing they did. We all were born in the skin we were born in, but we have to recognize that gives some of us certain advantages and others disadvantages. And our obligation as human beings is to recognize that and try to, change those outcomes when we can. But if we aren't talking about it, if we're not aware of it, we'll never change it. And we know the effects persist today. We know that, Black Americans are much more likely to be justice impacted. We certainly know by now that they have very different interactions with law enforcement than than white Americans do. It really, at all levels of the justice system, they have different experiences. But even just in walking around in normal everyday life, I think it's fair to say that we walk through life differently in America if we are white versus black, or, in some places, other ethnic minorities. I think that's a growing issue as well. So, I think we have to look at that at all levels. We could talk about the wealth gap. We know there's a significant difference in the wealth that white families have, black families have, and a lot of that is the result of very specific policy choices that our government has made along the way. So I think we have to talk about all of that. I do.
Yeah, I'm glad that one of the things, and I tell people who don't remember, I'm biased because I do diversity, equity, inclusion work on a daily basis and have for years. And it's just refreshing to hear that you're not afraid. You know what? I am a white woman. I understand my identity and I understand the identity of my family. And these are some of the issues that we've got to fix. And so it's really good to hear people feel comfortable saying that. Because it's the reality of what we're living. You got to understand your identity before you understand how you can, use your gifts, as you said earlier, to kind of address the issues. And so, Julius, what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I appreciate her being as candid as she is and open, and it goes a long way. We have a 2 or 3 other issues that you will have to address should you be elected. And one, I'll give you both of them, and you can tell us what your feelings are on both of them, because I know the people want to know, and you will probably have to address these issues because that's one of the things that we're going to be doing in the near future is holding our elected officials more accountable. One of those issues is the weeping time because it's going to court and it's going to be some changes, I believe. And the other issue is how do we, understanding that Savannah is the sister seat of this county, how do we get some equity when it comes to this 2-cent hike in the hotel tax, which has been turned down, but I know it's going to eventually pass. I don't know your position on it, but I believe that your state rep Edna Jackson is for it, but I don't know whether you are, because what we're trying to do is get some conditions, some promises of where this money is going to go to, not just to the tourists, not just to make everybody downtown feel good.
Right.
It has to be. You have areas and pockets in this county that look like it's in a third world country. You go to Clearview and Bayview, and you think, where the hell am I at? So, if you don't mind telling us how, if you can talk on both of those subjects, on either one first, the weeping time, which is coming up, and then the 2-cent tax.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, I'll start with weeping time. So that's what you mentioned first. Weeping time kind of gets to what we were just talking about, which is I was 30 something years old when I first heard that the weeping time was an event that even happened. My pastor started preaching on it, and sort of a story of the cost of discipleship. So that was my introduction to the weeping time, and I spent the first 18 years of my life here. So, and then again, since I've moved back as an adult. So it's a hugely important story locally. And I don't think there's a lot of disagreement that it's a hugely important story. A very significant part of our history that we should absolutely be talking about and learning about. So that's kind of issue A. But then issue B is, what do we do about it? Especially starting from where we're starting from here in 2022, which, as I understand it, there's the issue of the land, and that land is now and I'm depending on scholarship here. What I understand the land to be is partly the Otis Brock Elementary School, and partly on the plywood company. So, those decisions were made about the land, and that's where we're starting from and what we have to live with for now. When I sat down with Better Savannah, they kind of said, here's what we think should happen. And that was that some sort of sale from the plywood company to develop that into a full site, whatever that might be. Certainly, I would hope it would have a very strong educational component to it and commemorative. And I could get behind that. I think where it's gotten trickier for me to kind of pull apart is this when you bring in the Salvation Army piece. Excuse me. And, that's owned by the federal government, the housing authority, and now apparently going to be sold to the Salvation Army. So I understand that's in litigation. I think the litigation will be whatever it is. And, that's the thing. We have to live with what judges decide. So if that is stopped, then I think we could, look at ways to develop that. But if not, I think, this other alternative of a private sale of getting some of that other part of it and developing it would be fantastic and something I would support. I'll also say, I think part of there's overlap here, because I think the weeping time is not just a question of land, of the land and what we do with it, what was done then, what we do now. It's also, I'm sorry, this pollen is about land use and the ways that we have burdened Black neighborhoods with uses like, in this case, a homeless shelter, or perhaps industrial uses, or the way we build interstates and highways through Black neighborhoods. So it's sort of like, I don't think any of us dispute there's a need for a homeless shelter generally. We have needs for roads. We have needs for industrial uses. But what becomes unjust is that when we always expect this burden to be borne by Black neighborhoods. And I feel like that is some of what's going on here. Mm-hmm. I feel like some of the advocacy around this that I've heard is this community already has a lot of needs. Maybe they have homes, so their needs aren't the same as the homeless, but this community has a lot of needs, and we sort of unjustly burden it with this this homeless center. So I think, as I said, the litigation will be what it is, but it's absolutely an event that's worthwhile. A site that's worthwhile and an event in history we should all be learning about. I think the question now is just from a practical standpoint, how do we do that? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Okay. And the second one?
Yes. Hotel motel tax. So first, just generally, I do agree with raising the hotel motel tax. Speaking of burdens, the many tourists who come to our city burden us in certain ways too. I know they spend money here, but they also burden us. My husband and I drove downtown last night to go see Mavis Staples. And it was one of those deals where you were like, it's so hard to do anything downtown anymore. There's so many people. There's tourists walking, there's folks, parking is hard. So, tourists do create a certain amount of burden on us while they're benefiting our economy. So I think it makes perfect sense to put that financial, to make them pay for that, basically. Right. So that's that. But I think what you're really getting at is making sure that extra 2% is spent equitably, that it benefits everybody, that it's not just boosting the person downtown who's selling T-shirts in a store on Broughton Street, but that it's reaching Clearview and Bayview and other parts of the county, other parts of the city, And I think it should. I think it should. I would love to see us do some rebranding, so to speak, where we're really doing both of those things at once, which is, African American tourism and teaching this part of our history and drawing people to our community to learn about that. While we are making sure those dollars are spent equitably. So yes, there should be other folks at the table. There should be the Black Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, all of those other communities that aren't just hotel developers.
Okay, and because we all are for the hike. I'm for the hike. Hell, it probably need to be 5%, 5 cents. But I mean, because when I go to Florida or any place else, I'm paying taxes. The taxes are just crazy on the hotels. Right. So, and I think ours is reasonable here, and it needs to be hiked. But the monies from that, we just can't say, well, we're going to pour it into more tourism. We're going to give the chamber more money. Everybody needs to share in this, because you don't put something here that's going to burden me and then you don't compensate me for it. I think we had certain city leaders that were advocating for getting more of the money so that we can create it was a Black History Museum. It was we could take some of this money and say, okay, let's, I don't know what it could be used for that, but whatever. Sometimes there are limits on what you can use the money on. But even if it's SPLOS, whatever it is, we need to fix up these areas of the city of Savannah that is looking like Vietnam somewhere.
Right.
I mean, it looks bad. Yeah. And as long if we can put some of this money in other places, we got to have leaders that care, leaders that are going to advocate. One thing, and you gave great a great answer to both of those. But one of the things that I've been trying to press people to do, and I hope that it can get done, and it probably needs to come from the top down, being that you all would be the top down should you be successful, is that people we in order for us to be better and for everybody to be involved, we got to show on all levels of government that you all care, that everybody cares. Yes. The state legislature delegation, the county commission, the school board, the city council people, right. Each municipality and every one of those council people, the sheriff's office, everybody. I know they got this little municipal meeting that they have, but I'm talking about not just going to eat and networking amongst yourselves. I'm talking about meeting and having some dialogue about how do we fix this and this. Let's tackle one problem at a time. Okay, West Savannah has a problem. Everybody, let's tackle West Savannah. Let's see how we can make this better over here. Everybody's operating in silos. I know people don't like to hear that, but they are. The school board acts independent of everything. They don't get with anybody. The school, the city council, the county commission, and all the other municipalities. Nobody's together. The delegation, you don't hear from them until they're ready to break up a city. It's we don't know what if we work together, I think we can get a whole lot done. But it takes that type of cooperation, communication to get things done. You have to collaborate to get it all those 3 C's, and you can get it. You can get a whole lot done. But I'm hoping that we can have that in the next couple of years. That's what we fight for. That's why we created this platform that we have, our Black media, because what we try to do is we know that the news is not dispersed fairly or equitably in our community. So we have to give it out. We have to be able to be the ones that are bringing people to the people. If they're not going to watch WTOC and JCL and SAB, then we need to be saying, okay, watch us. Here's the news. Here's the candidate. Here, you can. We're going to give it to you fair and honest, and then you can make your own choice. And we appreciate you for coming on like this and answering our question. I'm sure Robert got a whole lot more.
Well, and one of the things I would like to add to what Julius is offering, one of the concerns I see at multiple layers in this conversation around crime, youth and community development is the inability for stakeholders at a leadership level to work collaboratively. And what I mean by that, it would be good to see us pull together council, commission, school board, all of these leaders with community members and churches that have real solutions. One of the things when I believe in claiming things. So when I joined city council in a few years in 2023, is to really focus on how do we work collaboratively to solve these problems. These are not things that are brand new to Savannah. These are situations that we have seen 20 plus years, right? And the one thing that baffles me and really disappoints me is this idea of young people, younger than my age, dying on the streets for no reason. What that tells us is we have an issue of poverty, which if I wish people talk more about poverty as they talked about that slap. And we have an issue of crime, which means that people are also don't have things to do. So in your opinion, how do we pull these community groups together, these churches, these people who have been in the trenches, and then tie that to the resources that the leaders can offer so that we begin to address the problem? No one can tell me that this is just an issue because drugs and weapons on the street. I don't believe in that. What I believe is poverty and an idle mind lead to craziness. But I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback on that.
Sure. I think there are root causes, and you're right, and that they are poverty. This thrives in segregated communities. Just statistically, it just shows that this stuff follows being segregated. So we are still a very segregated city. We tend to live apart from each other and worship apart from each other, and often send our kids to school apart from each other. So I'll just say on a personal level that's one of my biggest challenges as a parent is I just feel like unless you are intentional about every single decision you make, you will find yourself in spaces where people tend to look like you. And so I'll just offer that as a personal note. So those root causes are so hard to budge. Poverty is a difficult problem to solve. It's one we've been working on for decades. And the piece of this I got involved with was gun violence prevention, not because the cause is guns. Cause isn't guns, but the easy access is lethal. And once you lose somebody, they are gone and they're not coming back. And so I really felt like that was a failure of policy. That was something that with the political will and the work, we could fix part of that. And I still believe that. I think state government makes that really, really hard because on so many issues, and maybe we'll get into Port Wentworth a little bit later, I don't know, but so many issues, state government swoops down and says, no, we're going to decide that here. And you're saying we've got pastors on the ground, and we do. We've got community activists on the ground. We've got local leaders. We've got educators. We've got, people who, my gosh, what our educators deal with having to, the ways we make them the last line of defense for all these other problems we will not solve because we just refuse to try. So, I think that's part of it. But it's having the will. It's, I think those kind of soft skills of leadership are so important because I think in Savannah, a lot of times our disagreements aren't over the big policy stuff. Often we're pretty close on that, but that ability to work together and to cooperate and collaborate, makes all the difference there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we'll, if we could, Julius, let's shift to Melinda's question. Melinda's a great citizen in our area, our Cloverdale area, and has really done some astonishing work as a leader there. So we really appreciate you, Melinda. But a question is, the first district of House District 163 has been greatly neglected, and now discussion of creating a residential neighborhood on the Paxton property is being discussed. How would you ensure that proper infrastructure is put in place for existing neighborhoods before new neighborhoods are created?
Okay, that's a great question, and I'm glad that you raised it, because some of that was coming to mind when Julius and I were talking a few minutes ago, which is that 163, my word, is, if there is ever sort of a poster child for inequality, I feel like it's the 163rd district generally, where you have some very, West Savannah itself is not in the 163, but it comes right up close to it. And so there are definitely very impoverished neighborhoods in the 163rd, right on over to the historic district of Savannah, which is now multi-million-dollar homes that not even the wealthiest Savannahans can afford. This is people coming from out of town to buy those.
Right.
So we have a real inequality problem in the 163rd. As far as creating new neighborhoods, I agree that let's shore up the neighborhoods we have before we create new ones. We have a lot of old housing stock and a lot of old infrastructure. I think those decisions would probably happen at the city and county level. But I agree generally that we need to shore up our older neighborhoods before we create new ones.
Okay, awesome. Melinda also said we need a means to destroy these guns taken off the street rather than the police department selling them.
Yeah, I'd love to comment on that. I agree 100%. And that is something Senator Lester Jackson has been working on for a really long time. And that's, again, one of those things. State government preempts local government from doing anything related to guns, other than making decisions about local police forces. So they cannot destroy those crime guns without running afoul of state law. We can't say we don't want gun shows at the Civic Center. We can't say we want safe storage. That's just one of those things that Atlanta has taken away from us. And I have a real problem with that, because our state legislature benefits from gerrymandering. And so they have used a lot of anti-democratic ways to cement their own power. And then they take away our power as local governments to deal with our issues that we have to wake up and live with day in and day out. For a while, there were cities that were just not following that law. And Atlanta was just sitting on its crime guns for quite a while. And I think there have been some efforts recently to crack down on them. But I agree, if they can't be traced back to their rightful owner, if they're stolen and you can find who it was stolen from, that's one thing. But this idea that these are objects, and if it's not going to add value to our community to just put them all back out there, then we ought to be able to do something about that, make it a different decision.
Okay. Yeah, I think we ought to be able to destroy all of them if it's a gun and it wasn't properly protected. They need to destroy those guns. They don't need to be selling them and holding them for too long either. I mean, unless they want to send them to one place where we figure it's going to be a war in the next 20 years and we can use all those guns. Right. I don't know what's the thinking behind it. Some of our old leaders, just for full transparency, you work for one of them. Right. One of our older leaders, they feel like we should have to settle. And we're with the new leadership that we're bringing in, we're ushering in a new type of leadership now, and we're ushering in progressive people such as yourself, and people who are younger, have that that are thinking outside the box. And some of them think that we should just settle for what we get. And we're telling them that we have the numbers to really advocate for more than what you're trying to give us. And should you be elected, we just want to make sure that you get the whole picture, that you'll be available and accessible to the people. Because just like now, we can transition over to the Pope Wentworth issue, where you had the state reps who, out of just nowhere, said they wanted to put in a bill to dissolve a city because their friend, who don't know anything about governing, called them and asked them to do it. And without them saying, okay, let's see what the people say. Let's see what's happening here. This guy, I don't even know, what they're thinking. This is not how you govern, though. Not on any level. When this city has grown from 5,000, 3,000, 3,900 to almost 15,000. So it's a big change, and it's 5 or 10 more thousand coming. We got land cleared out all down 21 for new houses. It's going to be more change. So they're getting ready to try. That's why they want to split the city. And so, what we need is people going in there understanding that growth is going to happen. Change is going to happen. The old ways are no longer the ways that we live. And, I don't know how close attention you were paying to it, but if you want to tell us what your thoughts on that was, you can. I'm sure the voters of Pope Wentworth are listening.
Okay. Yeah, I was a somewhat distant observer of this until I was shocked, frankly, at the turn of events. I will say I've had an interest in sort of this issue of local control for a long time. In fact, I talked about that a good bit in my 2020 campaign. And it's only gotten worse since then, because what we've seen is, for example, we just went through a redistricting session where we saw in anywhere in the state that had a lot of demographic change and a lot of interest in Democratic candidates. We saw a real effort on the part of our state legislature to tamp that down and to stop it. And it went to some pretty extreme lengths in some of the metro Atlanta counties where, they went to great lengths to try to draw a majority Republican district in Gwinnett County, which is one of the most diverse counties in the entire state. I mean, Black, white, immigrant, so that's an example. And we saw a little bit of that locally too, with our delegation getting involved in that process when, that has always been historically something that, was given a lot of deference locally. So I think that's worth mentioning. I am aware that there has been huge growth in Port Wentworth. That's one of the real stories of the census, I believe, is that, huge population explosion in Port Wentworth. And I can't imagine, first of all, to me, to dissolve a city seems like such an extreme response. And it seems like that would logically and rationally, that would take place against a backdrop of declining population. They're, not increasing. Somebody decided when they incorporated Port Wentworth that we have a need for a city. We have city services, city needs. And so why you would decide decades later with the population growing that is no longer needed and becoming a part of unincorporated Chatham doesn't make any sense. I was very troubled by the willingness of at least one state legislator to swoop in and make that happen. And I think that something that extreme, if it were going to happen at all, it should only happen after a great deal of public input and a real understanding of this is what we're doing and this is why. I did see there was a video that circulated about where the mayor was speaking, and I can't imagine why you would offer yourself for mayor in 1 year, 2021, and then within a few months, you've come around to the idea that the city you wanted to lead shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
That just
Yeah.
doesn't make a bit of sense to me.
Well, in the history of the city, this is the first time that you've ever had 4 African Americans on the council. So now you have a majority council that is African American. The mayors, the people that ran with him, the only reason he won is because I was disqualified. He couldn't beat me in nowhere in the world. And so when you get the African American council, now he wants to give the city up. He no longer wants to be a part of it. He wants to take and divide the city, and he wants a study made. So that is just obvious on the surface, racist there, because he claimed that at the council meeting last week, he said the reason he told one of the citizens who asked him why, he told the citizen because of the people walking off the job. Dude, you were clapping when the people were walking off the job, when you could have said, no, just stay. I got this. A real leader would have. So,
Okay.
you know, and I'm not going to hop on this a whole lot because we will move on to whatever Robert got left on here. But
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you don't want to lead the city, turn in your resignation and let's have a special election and find somebody who does want to lead it.
Correct.
You know, if there's a problem with city governance, then perhaps there's a problem with leadership. But you don't dissolve a city over that.
Yeah, because you're mad and because your friend happens to be a representative at the state who grew up in Port Wentworth. I was born in Port Wentworth. You know, you don't call in favors like that. You know, so Robert, what you got next?
You jump right back in. Well, and one of the things that I really enjoy what Shalina is doing as a district attorney, and one of the things that I remember she talked about early in her campaign was finding ways to fund programs or incentives or ways to decrease or to avert this increase of prison population. One of the things I tell people about all the time is we've got to find a new way to alleviate the pressure on prisons and to find ways to rehabilitate people, right? To me, and you may appreciate this as an attorney, but to me, it feels like the criminal justice system overall is more of a capitalistic way of generating money, you know, and that's just a personal opinion. But what are your thoughts about that? How do we, have this crime, but balance it with the idea of rehabilitation and not adding to a prison population while also addressing the issue that we have?
Right. Well, I agree with you. I mean, I think one thing that we have done in our capitalist system is we have, you know, when you add a profit incentive to incarceration, then people are making money, fill those beds, build those prisons. There's money to be made off of that. And I think that is absolutely unconscionable. I don't think that market principles should have anything to do with our system of incarceration. We as a country incarcerate more of our citizens than any other. Certainly, I think, you know, democracy, civilized nation in the world, and maybe any. It is big business, and I think that's unjust. I think it's bad fiscal policy, and I think one of the reasons that here in Georgia, when we had during Nathan Deal's administration, is we did some good stuff, bipartisan. And, you know, sometimes, okay, Democrats might like it for this reason. It might be about human rights to one person, and it might be about saving money to somebody else. And if we get to the right result, to me, that's the most important thing. And we did some really good stuff. I think the current governor is not Nathan Deal and isn't quite as good as he is on that, and has sort of, you know, we've had some real efforts to roll some of that back that are really troubling. I think we need to look at the youth population that's impacted as well. So I for all those reasons, I support criminal justice reform generally. Anytime that we can, if someone is, not violent, if that person can be diverted, we could talk about substance use. That's something I have seen up close, and there need to be other solutions to substance use disorders other than incarceration. Mental health. The prison system in Georgia is the largest provider of mental health services. Hopefully that'll change with this new bill, but that's something to really stop and think about. So, again, it's all these things that we talked a little bit earlier about things we push on to educators. This is sort of analogous in that, there are so many problems we just don't deal with. And then we wonder why we have such a large prison population that breaks up families, that impacts neighborhoods. It disproportionately affects communities of color. So we're removing men from those situations. And there are so many effects of that. So I support all of those things. And then when you get to the issue of returning citizens, most people are going to return, we'll shelve capital punishment for a minute, and that's a whole other issue. And let's just acknowledge the fact most people are going to return. What do we want them to be like when they return? Do we want them to be able to hold a job, get a job, support families, contribute to their communities, contribute to the tax base, all of those kinds of things? So I think we have to start with the understanding these folks are coming back. What kind of people do we want them to be when they come back? What kind of opportunities do we want them to have when they come back? So, I support all those efforts.
Yeah, I'll just use something, and we're getting to our closing time. But one of the things I was hearing a young lady speak, and she she identified as indigenous, which means she's a part or possibly a part of the Native American culture. And she was asked by a white man, why do your people drink so much? Why are there so many alcoholics? Meaning we're talking about substance abuse. Mm-hmm. And she told him, she said, well, have you ever been part of a culture that has been disenfranchised, stolen from, taken advantage of for over 100 years? She was like, think about that mental trauma that has been passed on and on and on and continues to live in that trauma. And so people fail to realize that trauma is a health issue. It's not a criminal issue. No one wakes up one day saying, let me go find some drugs to smoke. That's not how this works. And so I totally agree with you in the fact that we've got to renegotiate and understand differently what's going on and stop victimizing people for hurt and pain and trauma and address it for what it is. And so as we shift out, though, how do people get in touch with your campaign, contribute, learn more about what you're doing?
Okay, sure. Thanks for that. And this gives me a chance to say something I forgot to earlier, which is, as far as accessibility, as a candidate, I'm very accessible, and so that's that's how I'll be as a rep as well. I've got a website with my platform and bio, with my phone number. I'm pretty active on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That website is www.AnnAllenWestbrookGA163.com. So you'll see the platform, you'll see my email. If there are things that folks want to ask me, I try to be really responsive on that. So if you've got a burning issue that you haven't heard me talk about yet in the various places I've been, then, send me an email and ask me or call me. That's my number on the website. It will ring to this phone that's sitting right next to me. So
give it out one more time.
It's my name, www.AnnAllenWestbrookGA163.com.
Okay.
And my phone number and email are on there. So I hope people will reach out. I love to talk about this kind of stuff. Like I said, that these issues are a passion for me that are going to, I'm going to be around one way or the other anyway. So let's talk and let me know what concerns you or anything you'd like to hear me talk more about.
Okay. We appreciate you coming. We appreciate your candid conversation with us. You were born here?
I was.
You went to school here?
I did.
All right, Terrain.
Okay, there's one question that you can't
I
get this
don't.
wrong.
I don't pass
What
the
high school?
grade.
Don't say Jenkins. Don't say Jenkins High School. Please don't.
Don't get this wrong.
Hmm.
What's the best high school in the city in Chatham County?
Jenkins High School, Warrior.
Oh man! Oh man!
That was for you, Professor Youre.
We're gonna have to bleep that part because Torres
Yeah.
Jenkins High School. Lord have
Okay,
mercy.
you know what? I'll say the Beach Bulldogs right here in the 163.
Oh Lord, you got it
We'll
wrong.
kill him, Fred.
You had 2 opportunities to get this right, man. It's the Wolverines of Woodville.
You're still wrong. Oh my God! But my parents did go to our alumni of Beach High School, so I give you half credit for that. You get a C+.
Chuck said we need someone who, like Lester Jackson, will listen to the merits of the argument and act in the interest of the people. That is absolutely correct. Lester will listen to you, and Lester will do what is right. I've noticed over the years. Well, Ms. Westbrook, and we appreciate you. We'll see you out there on the campaign trail. Good luck to you. And should you be successful, we will have you back so you can tell the people thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for having me today. I really enjoyed the discussion.
All right. Thanks a bunch, y'all. We'll see you next Saturday, same time, same place. Make sure you tune into the other shows on ATR and our Black Media Network. And take care. Have a great week.
I like that.